me tell you a little bit about Robert Edwards just before we start. So, graduate of Stanford University with a master's in documentary film. He won the 2001 Nicole Fellowship in Screenwriting from the Academy of Motion Pictures of Arts and Sciences for his first script, which was Land of the Blind, which in 2006 became his directorial debut, starring Ralph Fiennes and Donald Sutherland. As a writer, he has written scripts for directors such as Bennett Miller and Mark Romanek, and he's currently producing a feature documentary called The Last Laugh about the Holocaust as the last taboo subject for humor. With his wife and partner, director, cinematographer, and editor Fern Perlstein, who is also here tonight, and is also one of the producers of When I Live My Life Over Again. For his next film, Edwards is developing The Bomb in My Garden based on his adaptation of the memoir of the chief scientist in Saddam Hussein's uranium enrichment program with Johnny Depp's production company. So, this is someone who clearly has some experience in the film industry. But why don't you start with telling us a little bit about how this film came to be? Like, what was your inspiration for this story?
Well, first, thanks again, everybody, for coming and staying. And I hope you liked the film. The people who didn't like it left it. You know, they say you should write what you know, but I don't know anything about this world. I don't come from a showbiz family. I don't have any sisters. It was pure invention. But I was just got intrigued by the idea of an artist whose work is at odds with their personal life. I mean, Sinatra is a good example of somebody whose work is known for being very romantic and that, but you know, maybe a little bit difficult to be in an actual relationship with. And the father-daughter dynamic sort of suggested itself. It must be very difficult, I imagine, to be in the orbit of somebody who's that either successful or at least a celebrity or so self-absorbed. So that was kind of the origin of the idea.
Were you thinking Sinatra in particular?
A little bit, but I think it's, you know, it's common in the arts and even outside the arts. I mean, this film, although it's set in the world of music and showbiz, I think is really just a family story. And I think a lot of people can identify with a parent who maybe is, you know, a little bit more involved with their own ego than with the parenting side of things.
Unfortunately, that probably happens more often than people like to believe.
It does.
So Christopher Walken, who happens to be one of my favorite actors, he makes me laugh, he makes me cry. Mostly makes me laugh, but makes me cry even when he's serious. I mean, laugh even when he's serious sometimes. Was he always in your mind when you were casting this film, like, I wish I could have him, or did it just come about as you were, you know, going down the list of actors to consider for the film?
Well, none of the parts were written with anybody in mind, but when we got serious about making it, we knew right away we needed an actor to play Paul who could bring a lot of likability and charisma and charm, because on the page especially, that character can be pretty unpleasant. I mean, the things he says and does, the way he treats his kids. You needed an actor who the audience would still be rooting for. And Walken brings it in spades. I mean, he's got so much charm and so much charisma. In fact, we had the opposite problem in early editions of the film, early cuts. We couldn't make the audience dislike him at all. So we're trying to have this balance between the father and daughter. No matter what he did, the audience was like, ah, he's so charming, she's being a brat. This is a problem, so we had to balance it. It required some judicious editing to kind of even things out a little bit.
Had you ever worked with him in the past? Or?
Never worked with him, no, but I mean, I don't need to tell you, he's a consummate professional. He's made hundreds of movies, and you know, he's just like an amazing guy to work with.
That's great. It's nice to hear sometimes when there's an actor you admire, you hear someone say they're, not that you would tell us if he wasn't nice to work with, but it's nice to hear that someone, you know, that you admire their professional body of work is actually a nice person to be on the set.
Yeah, well, I mean, when I first met him, of course, it's intimidating, but he's just very, very humble. He's just very kind of zen about what he does, and he knows what he's good at, and he knows what he's not good at. Very aware of that, and really no ego involved in that at all. Totally unlike Paul. And then super intense when you get on set.
So obviously music plays a huge part in this movie. So can you describe a little bit the process of how you chose the music, where it was going, like, I think for many people here, you know, they're not in the film industry. So where does music come into play for you, particularly in this film where it was so important?
Well, I mean, I'm a music fan, but not really a musician. But the main song was written into the script because its lyrical content is important to the story. And because Paul's meant to have written it, it's a little bit on the corny side. And then when we started to make the movie, we hired a composer named Joe McGinty, who's this amazing piano player and band leader, and has worked with all kinds of folks. And so he did the music for the main song, and then he and a woodwind player named Mike McGinnis did the big band arrangement and had the full orchestra, and that was tons of fun to do. Then the other songs, Joe and I wrote one of them together, and I wrote one separately, and then there's source music that I chose just because it was stuff that I liked and fit the tone. The song she sings, that Jude sings in the open mic, is a song by a band from Texas called the Asylum Street Spankers that my wife and I used to love and see them every time they came through town. And they broke up. We'd heard them play that song once. They never recorded it, so it's not a known song. And I loved the song, and I thought, well, I'm going to steal it because, you know, I put it in this movie, nobody's ever heard it before, but it's a beautiful song. That's by somebody named Christina Mars.
No, you said you're not a musician, but you wrote some of the songs? Or
Yeah, I mean, you
lyrics,
know,
or?
like, yeah, I wrote lyrics and music to one of them, but you know, I'm not really a musician. So that's where Joe comes in.
So when we were doing some research on the film, and so this, often at the film festival, one of the things that we do is, in addition to watching the films, and we curate the films and pick which films we think we want to bring to our audience, we research a lot about the films. We see interviews with you, reviews of the film, interviews with Christopher Walken or some of the other actors. And one of the things that kept coming up in the interviews was how perfect a title for the movie this was. And it was recurring a lot. And then a few days ago,
Right.
we read online that the title is being changed.
Yeah, the movie's going to come out in theaters and video on demand in the spring, and it'll be under a different title. It'll be called One More Time. I understand why they want to change the title. It's a length. This one is kind of a mouthful. So I understand that, and One More Time kind of conveys the same thing. But of course, I like the original thing.
I think that we've had that before at our festival, where we've had a movie, and then we had a movie Teddy Bears a few years ago, and actually everybody came out of that movie and said, this is the worst title for that movie. It's very misleading. People thought it was a family film, and it was the farthest thing.
Yeah.
There was a lot of sex in this movie. It was the farthest thing from a family film. And then they did change the title when they released
What was it called when they released it?
You know, I don't remember.
See.
It was released by Tribeca Film
Right.
Distribution. I don't remember, but it starred Melanie Linsky, and it had a great cast. But I guess after they'd been at a lot of festivals and things like that, maybe some of the response that they were getting was that it wasn't a good title, but it was interesting that this was the reverse, because everything that I read said that this was a good title. But what that just means is when you see that One More Time has come out, tell all your friends that's the movie you got to go see.
Yeah, or if you go to see it, say, I think I've seen this before.
Right, it sounds vaguely familiar.
Ripping
I've
that
had a
other
dream
guy
about it. So I would like to open it up for some
Yeah,
questions,
please do.
because I think that's one of the great things about having these Q&As with the filmmaker here. So is there anyone who does have a question for Mr. Edwards? Yes.
In regards to Christopher Walken, did he have to audition, or how did that work?
Yeah, the question was, did Christopher Walken have to audition? No. He auditioned. No, we reached out to him through his agent, sent him the script, and her first question was, is he the villain? Because he, often plays the villains. And we said, well, not really. It's not that kind of movie. And we met, and he just, like I said, he just kind of got the part, so he understood the part so immediately and grasped it. But the intimidating thing for me was, we had a couple of meetings, and he said, I really want to read through the whole script with you so I can get a feel for the words. And I'm like, okay. So he did his part, and I read all the other parts. And
Did you change your voice? Reading the words?
I shook a little bit. I'm not an actor, so that was like an odd experience.
Yeah, because it was spot on.
Oh, thank you.
Go ahead.
That song is such a part of the movie. You come up with that first.
Trying to remember. It definitely was early in the process. It's funny because this is not the sort of thing I usually do, mostly, especially when I work for hire for other people as a writer. I mainly do political, military stuff, got this military background. espionage. This is so different than what I normally do. When I sat down to write it, I didn't have any commercial aspirations or thoughts at all. It was kind of pure pleasure just to write the story and see where it went. And that song, the notion of this guy who's not known as a songwriter and is in the twilight of his career and trying to rekindle it, it was definitely early on in the film because, as I say, the content of the song, the lyrics, kind of inform everything in the movie. So, yeah, it was an important early piece.
How did you come about using Oliver Platt, who's kind of an indie stalwart? He's actually in
Yeah.
another film we're showing
Is
here,
he?
that's playing right after this, Frank and Cindy.
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering, how do you come about using him?
He's the busiest man in showbiz. Oliver Platt works a lot, and rightly so, because I've always loved him for years and years, ever since I first saw him. I can't even remember what it was in. Maybe it was Funny Bones or something. But, you know, he's fantastic, and he's such a pro and so easy to work with. You know, he came in, he only worked like 5 or 6 days on the movie, and the first day he came on, they gave him the wrong sides, they gave him the wrong pages. And it was his big speech at the end of the movie when he kind of lays out the whole thing for the family. So that was his biggest scene, and he didn't know he had to do it that day until he walked on the set. And so, but he just nailed it because he's such a professional.
So how long did it take to film the movie? Like, you know, how long do you have rehearsal time with the actors?
We had a little bit of rehearsal time. You know, in indie movies, you often have none. You're lucky to get the actors at all, let alone have rehearsal. We had a few days of rehearsal, scattered, and then we shot it in
28
No, it was like 25 days. 25 days or so, which isn't horrible, but it's not like, you know, Hollywood studio schedule.
So you mentioned that you work on a lot of espionage, you write scripts, espionage and military. So was it different for you as a writer to write something like this that was more centered around family, or had you kind of toyed around with scripts in that in the past? Or?
I wanted to do something different, although I like that stuff. I just, you know, do it all the time. And so it was fun to do something that was in a completely different world, and also that I had no bosses on. And even things I've written for myself that were more in a serious vein, not that this isn't serious, but not family type thing. So it was really freeing and fun to do that. And then I didn't show it to anybody for about 4 years. I just put it away. I didn't think it was something that people would be interested in. And even then, my agent, when I finally did show it to him, he's like, "Oh, this isn't really a Robert Edwards kind of script." I'm Robert Edwards, and I think it is. So.
Do you want to explore that side of you more, or do you enjoy the process enough that you think, or you're just waiting for the idea, or?
I like to do all kinds of different things, so it's nice to do this. It'd be nice to do something a little bit different next time. Just keep from getting bored.
How is it? So when I was introducing you, I was saying you're working on a documentary with your wife, who's a documentary filmmaker. So how is it different, pros and cons, doing a documentary versus doing a narrative film?
Well, in some ways they're just two sides of the same coin, but in other ways they're very, very different. I mean, this film took about 3 years from the time we set out to make it until it premiered, which is pretty quick in the indie world. Ferns started working on the documentary. Well, the idea was 15 or 18 years ago. It took a long time to get funding, then it was 4 years in production, and she's just finishing it now. So that's one difference. Storytelling-wise, it's very similar, more similar than I think people think. I used to be a documentary editor, and that was the greatest training for being a screenwriter, because it's the same process of, here's this massive material, this raw material, whether it's real stuff that we shot or whether it's stuff that I made up, and then shaping it into a story. The advantage in the fiction world is very often in documentary I'd be cutting something and say to myself, oh God, I wish this character said, the sky's blue today. And you can't do it. In the fiction world, I just make them say that. So it's easier.
Right. Does anyone else have any questions? I know I'm kind of monopolizing the conversation here. Yes, go ahead.
What you just said, it's such a beautiful blend in that film. A documentary that's narrative. And what you just said is what you created there. Like you were able to add the comments that weren't.
Thank you.
just a beautiful blend in everything. And even the scenery and everything about it was.
Yeah, well, I can't take credit for that. I mean, we had such good people working on this, and they were all half my age. I couldn't believe these 25-year-old kids were so good and they'd all worked on 12 movies. I don't know how they did that. And they had no money. Like the art department, we had very little money, and somehow they managed to make this house look rich enough, you know. Everything that we asked for within reason they could do. And the locations department, they found that house.
Or even the posters.
The big posters. We saw the house for the first time. There's that big blank wall, and I said to the production designer, "Oh, we should put big murals up there." So it's easy for me to say that. It's not so easy for him to like create those mosaics, get them printed. They were putting them up with a cordless drill like seconds before the camera rolled. But you know, I can't take credit for that stuff because the team we had working on it was awesome.
And you shot a lot of this on Long Island, correct?
It's all shot in Shinnecock. Well, mainly in Shinnecock, that's where the house is. A little bit in Southampton, a little bit in East Hampton. The beach, I think, is in Amagansett. And where else do we shoot? Quogue. And then 2 days in Manhattan.
We like local films.
Yeah, it was great. We shot in the winter, and we all stayed in a hotel that was closed for the season. We took it over, the crew did, so it was like camp. There was nothing to do but work and go back and drink beer. So it was a great experience. I mean, very, very enjoyable.
I know you had another question.
I was just wondering, you talked about Sinatra and how you got some things from him. Did you go out and interview other type of families that maybe had some like dysfunction in it, and you know, to get some thoughts, some ideas from them? How you might want to have that look on screen?
No, but I mean, I guess I bring my own family's dysfunction. Unique in its own way. It's not like this, but it's equally like crazy. And I did some reading about Tony Bennett and some of the other guys in that world. But like I said, it's certainly not limited to crooners. It's not even limited to showbiz people. There's all kinds of, hello, this is my daughter Eloise, whose name is at the end. Movie dedicated to her because she was out there in that hotel with us the whole time. She was the only kid. But yeah, to your point, I mean, that family thing is really the heart of it. And hopefully people evolve from all kinds of different families. Well, maybe not hopefully. They can see in the movies some of those same dynamics. The sister thing also, I really wanted to have Sister Corinne feel at first like a caricature a little bit, like you kind of know her, she's a shrew and whatever, and then open her up and show these moments of vulnerability. Have each sister feel like the other one is the favorite, and have no idea of how much shit the other one's dealing with. So, that was,
The messaging about to her was, you know, regardless of how you feel about what I've done to you, it's your life. Go out and make it happen. So
Yeah.
you can do it without that. I mean, you know,
I'm glad that resonated.
that resonated.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I thought it was terrific.
Well, thank you very much. Did everybody hear that? It's terrific.
Remember that when you're voting?
No, it's very kind of you because, you know, when you work on these things, you're in a bubble, so you don't even know.
That's not my type of movie.
Oh, good.
So
Great, even better.
what made you come today?
I do like small independent films, but not, you know, like a dysfunctional family. It's not my
Right.
type of.
It doesn't sound like it's going to be good.
I don't know, it's got a good cast, you've got very good promo shots.
Oh, good.
It's a good, I responded very positively to the marketing of the film.
Oh, good.
When our programmers found this film, just so those of you who don't know, we have programmers at the film festival who go to festivals around the world, they go to private screenings, and they're, viewing hundreds of films, and then they narrow them down. We show about 25 features, feature films, and a whole bunch of shorts, about 30 shorts. And so then they have two of them, and they both watch each film, and then they come to us, which is the administrative team, and they tell us about all the films once they've narrowed them down. And we think about all sorts of things. Who's the audience for this film? And so then there are films like the film that was right before this in the next theater, which really appealed to people who were interested in mental health issues. It was a documentary. So we know there's an obvious audience for that film. Then we might have, documentaries tend to have kind of niche audiences that you can reach. A narrative film is harder.
Yeah, I can imagine it.
Because a narrative film could appeal to anyone. So if we have a film that we want to market to mental health professionals, we call all the mental health organizations on Long Island and say, we have this great film, we'd love to get your organization involved. I can't call everybody on Long Island and say, we've got this great narrative film with Christopher Walken and Amber Heard, you should come out. So it's a much harder job to market it, but we were so drawn in, aside from the fact that we were told it was a great movie by our programmers, by the marketing, I have to say.
I'm glad that's working.
And some prestigious festivals that you would get at. So are you a filmmaker, Eloise?
You want to say hello? Yeah, you are. She's watched, Fern is working on her film in our apartment, and so Eloise has watched her editing, and so she's very aware of like how you can move pieces around and change the movie, so, right?
It's not going to be long before she's making her own film on an iPhone, because I have a 9-year-old, and we've got like 12 films that he's already made. And,
Yeah, the kids today are much more media savvy and technologically savvy, clearly, than our generation.
We actually have a young filmmakers competition. We had kids that were screening the winners tomorrow, kids K through 12. So we had 100 submissions of kids. Most of them were in high school, but we did have kids who were in 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade, mostly who worked in part of a class. But yes, you would be amazed, short films made by kids. So maybe we'll show one of Eloise's films
Maybe next year.
one of these days. Does anyone have any other questions before? Yeah, oh, yeah.
What advice do you give to recent young film graduates?
What advice do I have for recent film graduates? I mean, I don't know if I have any great pearls of wisdom, but I mean, tenacity is far and away the most important quality because it's so hard to get a movie made. The industry is just, it's just a very difficult industry to work in. It's expensive. Even a movie like this, which is low budget, still is more expensive than I could fund out of my pocket. You just can't afford the tools the way that a painter or a writer or most other artists can. So you're really at the mercy of all kinds of forces. And it's very collaborative too. So if you're not tenacious, you're just never going to make it. On the other hand, if you are, if you're determined to succeed and you just keep pushing and pushing and pushing, you can succeed. It's all about willpower.
Go ahead.
The film seems to like go in a different direction at the very end when I guess Jude writes, the goodbye note. Is that
Yeah.
something you planned all along, or when you got to the end of the script and said we're going to go this way?
No, about the ending. No, I always kind of had it in mind that it would have this like melancholy downbeat ending because I didn't want to tie everything up in a neat bow and have them reconcile and have it all be good because I don't know if it is. I mean, I don't think Paul is going to be Paul, I don't think is ever going to turn into a warm, loving dad in the conventional sense, but he does care about his daughters, I think, in his own weird way. And I think that I really had it in my mind that the movie would end with him kind of behind glass, looking a little lonely, still rattling around in his house, but having done the right thing and, send his daughter out into the world. And her also, I didn't want her to sort of like solve all her problems in the last reel, but I wanted her to do something positive to kind of like put her life on the right track. And so who knows what happens to her, but at least she's done this one thing. And so for me, that hitting that tone, hopefully that like bittersweet ending was important.
See, you used the word melancholy. To me, it's almost uplifting.
Oh, good.
Seeing her,
Great.
forgive.
Right.
And move on in a positive way.
Well, that's great. I mean, that's sort of the same thing. I do think she's very forgiving in the way that he does leave her a little bit coldly, to wear her seatbelt, and he goes up the stairs, and then she writes this lovely note to him, calls him up. So I wanted to have that uplifting feeling, but not in a cheesy Hollywood way. So hopefully it walked that line.
It's interesting. I thought it was a very interesting question, by the way. And when I'm thinking about, you said before that you write a lot of espionage. I wonder, is that like when you write those, you kind of know where you want it to go when you're starting? When you have mystery and something along those lines.
Yeah.
It's maybe more important. I don't know. I'm not a writer.
No, I was going for that moody John le Carré feeling, world weariness. And here, nobody's connected those dots before.
Okay. Do we have any other questions? Eloise, do you have any questions for your dad?
Didn't say anything to these nice people. No, okay. Thank you again, everybody. I really appreciate you coming to see the movie and sticking around like this.
Thank you so much for coming, and another round of applause for Robert Edwards.
Thank you.